I work for an affiliate company. I am a merchandiser, and the sole product of the company I work for is Anheuser-Busch products. So with all this canceling going on, I've never seen such little sales in this past few days on these products. And it's sad because when people don't buy this beer, I don't make money, and I can't feed my family. So it's kind of heartbreaking, I guess, that Anheuser-Busch did what they did. They don't know their clientele. So it's kind of heartbreaking. Thanks, Anheuser-Busch. I may not be able to feed my family coming up here soon.
I'm a businesswoman. I had a really clear job to do when I took over Bud Light. And it was, this brand is in decline. It's been in decline for a really long time. And if we do not attract young drinkers to come and drink this brand, there will be no future for Bud Light. So I had this super clear mandate. It's like, we need to evolve and elevate this incredibly iconic brand. And what I brought to that was a belief in, okay, what does evolve and elevate mean? It means inclusivity. It means shifting the tone. It means having a campaign that's truly inclusive and feels lighter and brighter and different and appeals to women and to men. And representation is at sort of the heart of evolution. You've got to see people who reflect you in the work. And we had this hangover. I mean, Bud Light had been kind of a brand of bratty, kind of out of touch humor. And it was really important that we had another approach.
Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. So I wanted to talk about this Bud Light story that doesn't seem to be going away anytime soon. So I found it interesting hearing from the VP of Marketing. This strategy that she's implementing is basically to appeal to Gen Z, which, was obvious. But I found it interesting how she was saying she wants inclusivity and to appeal to men and women. So I don't see how Dylan Mulvaney is somebody who's going to appeal to both men and women. Now, maybe with Gen Z, that will be the case because you have, people we have young girls who are all for this biological males, imitating them and, dressing as women and saying they identify, as women, taking their sports, taking their spaces. There seems to be a lot of young women who are okay with that. So perhaps it will appeal to them. And then for men, again, you would think that it's masculinity that will appeal to men. But unfortunately, this current generation has been brainwashed to see masculinity as something that is negative. We had this toxic masculinity that was pushed down our throats recently. Perhaps their generation believes that if a man is masculine, they're automatically, misogynist. They're dangerous in some way. So perhaps that's why they see Dylan as a perfect person to appeal to that generation. Now, obviously, I'm not generalizing. Well, I am generalizing, but I'm not saying that all Gen Z think that way. Not at all. But yeah, maybe that's what's happening. So is that a good business move? Is that a good marketing strategy? I would say, I believe that marketing is not really about inclusivity. It's about targeting your audience. So that involves actually excluding those who don't fit into, your audience. It's about, if you have a core customer base, that's who you want to target, right? Apparently not. So, I would say that Dylan, who admitted apparently knows nothing about March Madness, is somebody who isn't going to appeal to, in my generation, isn't somebody who's going to appeal to women and isn't going to appeal to men, because men, regard Budweiser as something that's masculine. It's a drink you sit around with your boys and, talking, drinking, barbecuing, whatever. It's considered a brand that appeals to, men, typically. And then Dylan is a biological male, so I don't see how they believe that that's what's going to appeal to women. I really don't, especially when you're talking about inclusivity, but you're excluding women because you've chosen somebody who identifies as a woman who's a biological male, therefore deciding to choose Dylan over a woman for your campaign. You could have chosen a female athlete. You could have chosen a female model. You could have chosen a regular mother, a regular woman to represent your brand. But instead you chose a biological male who presents, himself as a woman, who identifies as a woman. So again, I would say that's excluding women. That's alienating your female, audience. It's not as inclusive as you think it is. Now, if you want to talk about just appealing to Americans in general, I would say what they've done in the past is more in line with that. So let's take a look at one of their old campaigns.
Call us typical Americans. Maybe because we live typical American lives. Like this typical American, showing off his strength. So typical. Look at him, touching other people's things. Always so competitive. Typical Americans, showing up uninvited. Typical Americans, always celebrating with their typical American beer. So, next time someone labels you typical, show them what typical can do.
That seemed pretty inclusive to me, but I guess patriotism is now taboo. And, just the idea of being an American apparently is now taboo. The term typical as well. I'm sure there's people who frown upon that too. So, yeah, maybe this was just in 2020. It wasn't even that long ago. This was in 2020, and they've gone from appealing to typical Americans, black, white, male, female, truck drivers, firefighters, regular people, to now appealing to people who are in support of Dylan Mulvaney. Again, there's someone with millions of followers, yes, but is very much in this whole woke, radical side of your customer base. That's who they're appealing to now. And yeah, it's definitely interesting to see whether this is going to work for them. Personally, I don't think the brand has been cancelled. This is just basically, I don't want to support this brand anymore. Their actions are a slap in the face to typical Americans. Their actions are a slap in the face to women. So I don't want to support the brand anymore. That's all it is. But people who want to support that brand can still do so. People who think this is great can buy 10 cases of Budweiser every day if they want to. So it's not, I don't think it's cancelling the brand per se. It's just no longer supporting it. There's a difference. When Parler tried to operate as a business, they got shut down from the source, from the very source. Google, Apple wouldn't allow them to have a platform because people made sure of it. People on the left made sure of it. That's cancelling. When you remove their social media platforms, so they can't advertise, they can't market, they can't communicate with their audience, that's cancelling. But just saying that I don't want to buy that brand anymore, there's a million of, beers, regular beers to choose from. I'm just going to buy another brand. That's not cancelling, that's just deciding it's not for you anymore and basically leaving it alone. That's all it is. So I don't think it's the same as cancelling, but they're going to say, oh, you're buying into cancel culture. I thought you were against cancel culture. But we should see what the repercussions are. Initially, what came out was that their stock fell by 3%. But in the grand scheme of things, that really wasn't a big deal. They said that they were still kind of competitive. Compared to their competitors, they were still ahead, So, but now, we're seeing more reports come out that perhaps they're suffering more than they like to let on. So we got this article saying that sales of Bud Light are way down after controversial ad campaign and could send shockwaves up and down the beer company's supply line. With a drop in sales impacting Bud Light distributors, companies along certain geographic areas of the US supply line fear political backlash and subsequent sales impact from their demographic. See, this is the thing. These companies would do a lot better if they just stayed out of the politics. because that way they can appeal to people of all different political spectrums, the left, the right, people in between, independents. If they just stick to focusing on the beer, staying out of the politics, then they're not going to alienate anybody. So obviously people in certain parts of the country that are more conservative, that are red leaning, red states, people in red states, they probably will see their sales suffer. And that's not going to help their bottom line, is it? We dispense with any discussion of politics or social issues, but note that the publication stated that some distributors in the heartland and south were increasingly cautious given negative consumer reaction. Yeah, I mean, there's so many other beers to choose from. It's not like this is some unique craft beer that's hard to get a hold of. No, there's plenty of brands that people can turn to if you decide that you're going to alienate certain customer, base. They're just going to go elsewhere, and that's all this is. Consumer response is even more vital for suppliers, including Ball Corp, as Anheuser-Busch made up roughly 13% of the aluminium can manufacturers' total sales in 2022, while beer and soft drinks accounted for around 70% of Ball's North American business. Roxland wrote, Roxland also maintained a hold rating on Ball Corp, but noted that North American volumes could be pressured should this issue persist, and advised caution until backlash from the campaign clears. Amid growing criticism over the ad campaign, Bud Light has not made a social media post in over a week, with their last tweet coming on April 1st. Wow. Over the last couple of days, shares for Bud Light's parent company, Anheuser-Busch, have tumbled roughly 4% and are down again today as sales continue to slump. Anheuser-Busch and the Ball Corp did not immediately respond to Fox Business inquiries. Wow. So, I mean, that has to be significant. At first, they were kind of downplaying it. 3% drop, they're still ahead of their competitors. But now we're starting to see the repercussions of this. And, time will tell. That's all I say. I agree with Matt Walsh. I don't think you can boycott everything. I am personally not buying native deodorant anymore because, I'm just not interested in it. That's just what it comes down to. One of, Dylan's sponsors. But I can't boycott everything. I don't drink Bud Light anyway. I rarely drink beer. I love craft beer, stouts in particular. I don't drink, beer too often because a beer is like a meal. The beers I drink, stouts and all of that, it's like a meal. So I don't really drink them too often. But I think Matt Walsh has the right idea. Pick on one. Find that one company that you want to pick on and, make an example of them. And I think Bud Light is a good company to pick. They've gone from, appealing to typical Americans to saying, forget you guys, we're only interested in Gen Z and, the future. I don't think it's very good marketing to say that you want to be inclusive and then alienate a significant, proportion of your customer base. So let me know what you guys think. Do you really think that they care that conservatives are not supporting the brand anymore? Do you think it's going to have an impact? So share your thoughts below. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next video.